Hey guys, welcome back to the beginner lesson series. In this video we are going to be talking about counting and strumming. Counting and rhythm is just something that we're obviously not going to be able to avoid with music and guitar. And that's one thing that I see that gets bypassed a lot and gives people a lot of trouble. Rhythm is kind of this thing that's, it's not necessarily very tangible and it's hard to grasp, and we're dealing with this just kind of directional instruction rather than thinking about beat counts. So direction definitely helps because that's something that we can relate to, but we don't want that to be our only understanding of rhythm. So initially we're going to be counting out loud. We'll also do a little metronome work. A metronome is something that you definitely want to have. You can there's tons of apps for that for your phone, or having a physical one like this. This is a chord TM50. I think they actually just updated to TM60. This is actually a tuner and metronome combined, but in any case, a metronome is something that you will want to have so you can practice counting on your own, doing it with a metronome by itself, and then putting those two things together. We'll do a little bit of that in this video. So this is just kind of working on building that internal timing system. So every time we sit down to play something, we're always thinking about the presence of a beat, right? The beat is what drives everything. It's what allows people to play together. The pulse, the beat, however you want to think about that, is the heartbeat of music, and that stays very consistent, right? We want to think about it that way, and almost doing it robotically or mechanically initially, because it's easier to understand it that way rather than going too fast and just counting loosely, and maybe we're losing track of how we're counting, or a lot of things can go awry. So, as far as what a beat is, we're not going to have visuals of like quarter notes and eighth notes and all that stuff. If there's interest in that, then I can certainly do that in another video. But the quarter note is just the beat, right? That is the heartbeat. For a lot of music, it depends on time signature, but we're talking about things that are 4 beats per measure. So just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's 4 beats. So every time we say a number, or 4 quarter notes, 4 beats, right? The quarter note and the beat are the same thing. So every time we start counting at the onset of a new number, that is the start of a new beat, and that beat lasts until the next beat comes in. 1, 2, 3, 4. One thing I like about being able to do it with your voice is that you can sustain that sound, because if you go 1, 2, 3, 4 and you're counting it real short, that's kind of how the metronome does it, and it can confuse your sense of how much time has passed, right? So if we're thinking ba, 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 just a long held sound, it's easy to hear the similarity or continuity from one beat to the next. Now, another way we can deal with that, and this is certainly the most common way of counting, is what we're going to do here, is putting the and in between, because we want to start slow and it can feel difficult or take a lot of our breath to go 1, 2, 3, and we don't necessarily want to get tired out that way. So we're going to put the and in between, and this is where eighth notes come into play. So we'll talk about it in more detail in a second when we start playing, but 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and so gives us a little bit more. We get to break it up. But the 1 and the and of 1, or the 2 and the and of 2, makes up a full beat, right? 1, thinking very mechanically, like I said earlier. This is super important to the development of it, and then things are going to become more natural as you continue to do this stuff. So we're going to take that chord progression from our last video, C major to A minor to E minor to G major, and we're going to play it with quarter notes, counting the way that we were just counting, and we're going to play it with eighth notes, counting in the same manner, which is going to introduce down-up strumming, and I'll talk a little bit about up strumming as well. But keeping that counting consistent, even, slow to start out, we'll speed it up at the end, and hopefully by now you're feeling comfortable with getting your fingers more or less in position for those chords and keeping that right hand moving. So that thing I was talking about in that video, in the previous video, is going to be very important here. You don't want to, one of the issues that you're going to run into but try to deal with is, you know, say we're strumming down up here, so you're thinking about what that right hand is doing and the brain's not focusing on the left hand anymore, and then we get to a chord switch, it's like, oh, I got to go over here, and now the right hand stops, and then the right hand starts again, and then the left hand stops thinking. So it's dealing with that idea of, you know, multitasking, but not really multitasking. It's just knowing what things we need to think about in what moments, okay? And that certainly initially is going to feel like a lot to handle, but you do it nice and slow and it builds pretty quickly. All right, so remember, chord progression is C major, then A minor, then E minor, then G major. Okay, and we're just going to put that on a loop, and we're going to count out loud together the way that I was just doing a second ago with the long 1 and 2, and let that you know, your syllable carry out. Don't count it short, and then we'll also do that with the metronome here, starting out with just down strums. Okay, it's important to count yourself in at the same tempo that you're going to play at. Don't go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and okay, and start playing. A lot of people do that. Be patient with it. 1 and 2 and 3 and C major. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 A minor. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E minor, and my right hand is just on autopilot right now for G major and 2 and 3 and back to C major and 2, and I'm rocking my body to get you to think about counting and feeling that consistency, making the beat counting more internalized. 3 and, but as you start to speed up and get more comfortable with this, it's going to be ideal to stay more still and not move around. This is just to kind of get this idea of counting 1 and 2 and into our system. 3 and a little bit faster. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 A minor. Still thinking about those transitions from the previous video, getting to each chord in the same manner, right? So now that becomes something that happens more naturally, and we don't have to think about it as much. Now we're thinking about our counting, the consistency of the right hand, and then visualizing that next chord, trusting our fingers, right? Trusting our left hand to find the right strings and the right fret numbers. And if they don't, then you just keep strumming and adjust them as you go. That is part of the game. E minor and 2 and 3 and 4, G major and 2 and 3 and 4 and Okay, good. So let's do that same thing with the metronome, and I'm just going to get my tap tempo here. We were probably going around 40. Set it around 45 here. Let's see. One, and it's going a little bit faster than what we were doing. Let's bring it back down. So I'm going to be at 38, right? Starting slow. So I'll show you real quick. Hopefully you can see this okay. I've got it on 38 beats per minute, and then you see the little rhythmic symbol there. That is an eighth note symbol. The two little note heads connected by the beam. That's eighth note. So that's counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? I like that because it divides the beat up, and that's something that we're constantly going to have to be thinking about. There are other settings that work well, but let's just start with this for now, just so we know that we're counting the what we call the downbeat and the upbeat there, right? 1 and 2 and down, up, down, up. An easy way to think about that is if you want to start tapping your foot, you tap down and then up. Down on the number, up on the and, down, up, and that's another part of kind of internalizing everything. Okay, same thing with quarter notes here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and C. I'm going to strum a little lighter to make sure we can hear that metronome. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and A minor 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, E minor and 2 and 3 and 4 and G and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, good. So same speed, but now we're going to introduce eighth notes as far as our strumming is concerned, right? I can count eighth notes like we just were, but strum quarter notes. I was letting the strum ring through the number and also the and. So that's an important distinction. So now we're going to strum on the number and also the and. Down on the number, up on the and. Quick note about up strums. Down strums are going to feel more natural because we're moving with gravity. It just feels easier to do. When you come up, you do not have to drag that pick across the strings. You're just going to catch 2 to 3 strings because you're going to have the strings already ringing out from the down strum. For instance, C major, I've got 5 strings ringing out there. I don't need to do this. That just sounds awkward, right? So there's not some magic trick to getting all the strings in there. There's of course going to be a lot of variety of situations to deal with, but that dragging while strumming and trying to maintain continuity of sound is not going to sound right? If I did that's just taking more effort. Now that is a sound effect that we could utilize, but here we're talking about just getting comfortable with just general strumming. So I just need to get past that barrier of the first string and also kind of tilt my pick, get a little bit of an angle here to where it's pointing down so I can easily get past that first string and then just strum 2 or 3 strings, and then you're already thinking about returning back with a down strum. So from this angle, you see a little bit of wrist motion there, right? If you're squeezing your pick too tight and your wrist is stiff, then you're going to get this happening. Obviously, we don't want that either. Okay, so here's what we're talking about, using that pick to get the sound that we want. We have to relax that grip It's okay if you lose the pick sometimes. Might fall in the sound hole of your guitar, fall on the ground, what have you. You're trying to find that optimal pressure, okay? So if you're getting a real harsh sound, then you're squeezing it too tight. If you're losing the pick out of your fingers, then you're not holding it tight enough, and that's how you start to balance out and figure out what you need. But remember here, I've got that pick kind of tilted, the point of the pick tilted up there, and makes it easier to get the pick going through the strings. And then the opposite when I come back, just a slight tilt of that tip of the pick downward is going to make it easier to get across the strings. And I've kind of got this like a circular or figure 8 motion happening, right? Lots of little forearm rotation and wrist movement. I'm also using my fingers here. So just be thinking about how you're doing that, and the details will start to present themselves and become more clear as time goes and you're practicing more. All right. Strumming eighth notes, counting eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and A minor 2 and 3 and 4 E minor and 2 and 3 and G major. So we are trying to make the transition as seamless as possible, and with this slower tempo we can pretty much hang on to that chord to that last moment before we transition, because it's a slower tempo, right? It's giving us that time, that freedom to think about getting into the next chord shape, left hand position. Now, if this is too fast, let's slow it down. 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and E minor and 2 and 3 and 4 and G major and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Okay, so side note, if putting those chord transitions in there is too much right now, going from C to A minor to E minor to G and counting, take the transitions out and just use a single chord, or do it in pairs like we were doing previously, right? So E minor, probably the easiest one to get your left hand on. Just start there, just 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Same process that we just went through, just to focus on the right hand, and then start working with transitions, maybe E minor to A minor. 1 and 2 and 3, and keeping our eyes on that left hand, thinking about the consistency of counting, working our way up to strumming down and then up and then down and then up and then down and then up. 4 and 1. Very important to control your speed, and if 4 chords is too much to think about, then just go to 1 chord. Doesn't matter, we're just really focusing on the counting here. And then you can, once you're comfortable with that, start throwing transitions in. And then you can work up to the 4 chord progression. All right, let's do with the metronome. Same tempo here, 38 beats per minute on eighth notes, strumming down on the number, up on the and. That is strumming eighth notes. Doesn't mean we're always going to be strumming down, up on eighth notes, but that is certainly the way you want to initially learn it, and that is a very common way of dealing with it as far as strum patterns are concerned. All right, here we go. So I'll just start out with the C major chord with this one, and then I'll move into a transition, and then I'll put the 4 chords together, okay? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and really just listening to that metronome and making sure that I'm playing with it. I'm not looking at it, right? I'm listening to it and trying to maintain that accuracy. You don't want to get caught up with staring at the metronome, the little red dot or the needle. This is all in the ear. Alright, just trying to maintain that consistency. Okay, now we're going to go C to A minor 1 and 2 and 3 and A minor. Back to C major. And if you're feeling good about feeling that beat, maybe don't rock the body so much and just get that left foot involved. I'm tapping down, up, so my left foot and my right hand are working together here. Okay? Now we're going to go all the way through. E minor. And G major. One more time. A minor. E minor. And G major. And C. Sorry, I'm so used to rocking back and forth with my students that I like subconsciously do it. So now you have chords, 4 chords that sound good together. You've got your left hand moving around those 4 chords, and you've got your strumming arm and pick dealing with being consistent, strumming down and up. This is the essence of music and strum patterns and chord progressions. And what you will find out in the next video is that it is pretty easy to get something musical out of this once we start to make very slight manipulations to it and then speed it up a little bit. So with this stuff that we were just doing in this video, try different tempos, right? If you're doing 38, 40, whatever it is, then it's ideal to do small increases, maybe like 2 to 3 beats per minute, and just play around with that so the difference or the increase perceptibly is almost negligible. But there is value in just going, I'm going to try 100 beats per minute and see what that feels like. You know, it's okay to fall apart trying something that is going to be too difficult just to get a sense of what that's going to be like, and then go back into territory that you feel comfortable with and start bumping that up little by little. Anyways, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.